The first light of dawn had barely brushed the Colorado sky when old rancher Samuel Thorne stepped out onto the splintered porch of his weather-beaten homestead. The cold morning air settling against his skin like a thin, deep reminder of time's relentless crawl. He had lived 63 years under these same mountains, watching the land shift colors with each passing season: gold in the summer, red in the fall, silver in the winter, and green in spring. Yet today the land felt different, alive in a way he couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was because he knew what he was about to do, a decision he had wrestled with through sleepless nights and long rides across silent fields. The ranch stretched far beyond what the eye could see. Acres upon acres of grassland, kissed by the wind, bordered by cliffs that rose like ancient guardians. But to Samuel, the land had become a weight rather than a gift. Age had slowed him. Loss had carved him hollow. His children were gone, scattered to cities that swallowed them whole, chasing lives that had no room for the rugged isolation of the frontier. His wife Mary had passed 2 winters ago, and since then the ranch had become a museum of memories, too heavy to bear alone. And so, over time, Samuel had begun noticing. The Apache family camped quietly on the far end of his property. Miguel, his wife Tala, and their children, who moved across the grasslands with a kind of reverence that Samuel had forgotten humans could possess. They never trespassed. They never hunted beyond what they needed. They never disturbed the peace. If anything, they honored the land more than he ever had. Something about that stirred him. Something about them reminded him of what this place once meant. He had approached them days earlier, with his hat in his hands and truth in his voice, and told them he wanted them to stay not as wanderers, not as tenants, but as stewards. He wanted to give them the land, not sell, not loan, give. Miguel had stared long and hard, unsure whether the old rancher was sincere or slipping into the confusion of age. But Samuel's eyes were clear. He spoke of legacy, of responsibility for the land, needing people who loved it enough to protect it. The Apaches had endured generations of displacement and broken promises, and Miguel didn't want to accept something that felt too good to be real. But Tala had sensed the truth in Samuel's trembling voice, and so they accepted, not for themselves alone, but for their children and their children's children. Now, as the sun crept over the mountains and spilled gold across the fields, Samuel saddled his horse, preparing to ride out and finalize what his heart had already decided, unaware that the choice he made would send ripples far beyond one family. Because what Miguel and Tala had not told him, what they could not have predicted, was that word had traveled swiftly through the wind, through the scattered bands of Apache who still roamed, still hunted, still preyed across the broken fragments of the land that once belonged to their people. Overnight, messages had passed from ridge to ridge, fire to fire. By the time Samuel tightened the last strap on his saddle, an entire tribe was already on the move, riding silently through the pre-dawn shadows toward his homestead, drawn not by greed, but by something sacred, the knowledge that someone, an outsider, a rancher, had done what no government, no settler, no official had offered in generations. He had given something back. And as Samuel swung onto his horse and took the first step toward the Apache family's camp, he felt the faint tremor beneath the earth hooves, many hooves moving in unison, like a heartbeat, returning after a long silence. Little did he know that within the hour, his quiet, lonely ranch would become the meeting place of an entire people, gathering not to take the land, but to honor the man who had offered it freely, humbly, and without condition.